Hello, my name is Lyra and I'm 33 years old. I'm about to tell you a story that has taken me a long time to articulate and share. As I reflect on the past, the memories of my tumultuous relationship with Dorian, my now ex-husband, flood my mind. It's difficult to put into words the pain and emotional turmoil I endured during those years of fruitless marriage. But I'm ready to share my story in the hopes that it will bring healing and closure to anyone who might need to hear a story like this. A few years ago, my world was turned upside down when I found out I was pregnant. It should have been a joyful time filled with anticipation and excitement. Instead, it was marked by stress and anxiety, mostly caused by Dorian's emotionally abusive behavior. The man I thought would be my rock and support system seemed more interested in his career than in our growing family. Ironically, Dorian worked as the CEO of a prominent family counseling center, preaching about the importance of family values and support. It was disheartening to witness his hypocrisy as he neglected his own family. He was so focused on his professional success that he disregarded my emotional needs and well-being. The toll of his abuse became evident during my pregnancy. The constant stress and emotional turmoil took a physical toll on me, leading to complications and early labor. It was a terrifying experience, and I desperately needed his support and care during such a vulnerable time. Instead, he remained distant and preoccupied with his own pursuits. I held on to hope, believing that the arrival of our son would bring us closer together, and it would awaken a sense of responsibility and love in Dorian. But my hopes were shattered as he continued to prioritize his career over our family. It felt like I was drowning in a sea of loneliness and neglect. I yearned for a partner who would be there for me, who would share the joys and burdens of parenthood. Instead, I was left to navigate the challenges of motherhood on my own. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, and the overwhelming responsibilities weighed heavily on my shoulders. I obviously complained, telling Dorian that I needed more support, but all he'd do is yell at me and threaten to make my life worse if I continued to bother him about useless matters. Dorian, do you find your career more fruitful than our relationship? Yes, Lyra, my career brings me fulfillment and success. Unlike you, it doesn't stress me out with useless matters. Useless? Do you think taking care of your son is useless? Don't speak to me that way. I told you I'm busy. Now get out of my office. But I can't handle taking care of Henry all on my own. He needs his father. I have better things to do than babysit. I have a career to focus on, Lyra. How can you work so hard for a company that prioritizes family values, yet fail to prioritize our own family? How dare you question me? You will regret saying that, Lyra. I'll make sure of it. Honestly, Dorian, do your worst. I'm sick of your attitude and I'm done with you. Maybe I should divorce you and bring your happy-go-lucky family values down with me. Dorian never liked it when I threatened him with divorce. It would be bad for business, as he would put it. So saying this made him very angry, and surely enough, he'd always make me pay for it with more verbal and emotional abuse. Months passed, and Henry grew up with little presence of his father. Dorian's absence in his life became more pronounced with each passing day. As much as it was extremely difficult, I was determined to provide a loving and stable environment for Henry, choosing to shoulder the responsibility of raising him alone. Henry's first birthday had come around, and when I tell you this man deserves an Oscar for his performance, you have to believe me. When family and friends came over to celebrate, He made sure to plaster on the fakest smile, acting as though being the best dad ever was his forte. In addition to our guests being present, Dorian had invited some people to publicize this momentous occasion for his place of work. He said that it would be good for his brand as a loving father and husband, which couldn't be further from the truth. Even though I was sick of his duplicity, I was glad that I at least had some help. But as everyone will tell you, one thing that children don't do is lie. They will not hesitate to show you how they truly feel about you, and my little Henry was no exception. Whenever Dorian tried to hold Henry for the cameras, he'd cry and scream his little head off, only being calmed down when soothed by me and some other family members. People thought it was quite odd that Henry would cry bloody murder whenever his loving and present father would try to hold him. But Dorian awkwardly brushed it off by saying things like, "Must be the cologne I'm wearing," or "I'm starting to think that the Oedipus complex is kicking in." Nonetheless, the press publicity that he hired were recording everything as was requested. But I overheard him tell them not to post all of the posts and pictures that made him look like a bad father, reassuring them that Henry was probably fussy and colicky. It was jarring for someone like me, who knew the extent of Dorian's horridness being coated in fake smiles and laughter. It was like I was in a horror movie. Although Henry's first birthday could have been better, I was glad that things ended smoothly in the end. I mean, with a father like Dorian, a half-decent party was the best that you'd get. No amount of fakeness and duplicitousness could cover up all of the ugliness that Dorian was hiding beneath. Even though he did a good job at acting, trust me when I say that the truth will always come to light. And that's exactly what happened. Not long after Henry's birthday, I was presented with shocking news from my dear husband. Dorian dropped a bombshell on me one evening. He casually mentioned that he was planning a family trip to Mexico. My heart sank as the reality of the situation hit me. How could he even think of leaving when I had just started to resume work and needed his support, now more than ever in raising Henry? "Are you serious, Dorian?" "What is it now, Lyra? I'm tired of you." "I can't handle everything on my own. Going on a trip now is the last thing I need. I just started going back to work. I can't go on vacation." "Who said you'd be going on the trip? This is for me and my brothers." "Wow, so you weren't even considering me in this family trip of yours?" "What's the issue? Just now, you just said that you wouldn't be able to make it anyway, so everything works out." "No, Dorian. Regardless of whether you're going on vacation or not, I still need help with Henry. You can't go on that trip." Dorian's cold gaze met mine. "I'm going on this trip, whether you like it or not. Stop pestering me." His dismissive words pierced through me like daggers. The man I once loved seemed unrecognizable, consumed by his own selfish desires. I couldn't fathom how he could prioritize a vacation over a family's well-being. "Why did we even have a baby together if you were going to act like this?" I was sobbing at that point, unable to fathom this behavior. "We made a commitment, Dorian. We agreed to bring a child into this world." Dorian's voice turned icy as he sneered. "I only had the baby to keep up appearances. If I'd known that you'd be this pissy about it, I wouldn't have had a kid. It's a burden I regret every day." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. The man standing before me was no longer the person I fell in love with. I married a monster, someone who cared more about his own image than the happiness and stability of our family. unable to bear the weight of my shattered dreams and broken heart. I sobbed uncontrollably. The realization that I had married someone so callous and cruel overwhelmed me. How had I been so blind? Dorian's final words cut through the silence, fueling the fire of my despair. When I come back, I expect to find a wife who is docile and obedient. No more of this nonsense. I didn't know it then, but that night a newfound strength rose within me. Despite the pain and heartache, I knew I had to protect myself and Henry from this toxic individual. I made a silent vow to rise above his expectations and reclaim my independence. As Dorian embarked on his trip to Mexico, I naively hoped that his absence would bring some relief from his constant abuse. Little did I know that the torment would continue, albeit in a different form. It started with a notification on my phone several hours after he left. Unusual transactions and exorbitant amounts began appearing on my credit card statement. Panic surged through me as I realized that Dorian was using my card to fund their lavish vacation. How could he stoop so low? I immediately dialed Dorian's number, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "What the hell is going on, Dorian? Why are you charging everything on my credit card?" His response dripped with malicious satisfaction. "Consider it punishment for all the lip you've been giving me lately. You'll literally pay for your defiance." Fury coursed through my veins. How dare he exploit my finances as a means of control? "Go to hell, Dorian." In his rage, Dorian retaliated. "Oh, you want to act tough now? Let me tell you something, darling. The only reason why you're acting like this is because I'm not there to teach you a lesson. I'll spend so much money that I'll max out your credit card. You'll regret ever crossing me." Tired of his abuse and threats, a fire ignited within me. I refused to be his victim any longer. "Go ahead, Dorian, do your worst, because I promise you, I will ruin your life just as you've ruined mine." With renewed determination, I took the first step towards freeing myself from this nightmare. I cut the call and proceeded to block him so that I wouldn't get deterred from my mission. That very day, I was in the works of hiring a skilled lawyer recommended to me by a close friend and initiated divorce proceedings. Thankfully, it didn't take long to schedule a meeting a couple of days later. After explaining my horrid story to him, my lawyer advised me to gather as much evidence as possible to expose Dorian's true nature and to maximize my benefits from the awaiting divorce settlement. I meticulously combed through the security camera footage in our home, capturing instances of his aggression and cruelty. I also gathered text messages and voicemails that showcased his abusive behavior, leaving a trail of evidence that would shatter his carefully constructed facade. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to the publicity team Dorian had hired for Henry's birthday party. I pleaded with them to provide me with the pictures and footage of Dorian and Henry, demonstrating that even his own son felt unsafe and uncomfortable in his presence. Thankfully, after hearing and sympathizing with my story, they complied. They helped me out tremendously, sending me all of the evidence I wanted and wished me well on my journey for justice and reparations. The pieces were slowly coming together. With the help of some friends who had told me to leave this man long ago, I managed to finish my investigation within the week, all the while continuously documenting the frivolous charges he would make on my credit card as further evidence of his trying to control and abuse me. I didn't care to disable the credit card because I knew that I would make the money back, and more, from the divorce. I let him think he was hurting me just so that I could hurt him much more in the end. The evidence I accumulated would serve as a powerful weapon in this battle for justice. No longer would I allow Dorian's manipulation and abuse to dictate my life. A week had gone by, and I knew that I had to work quickly because in another week, Dorian would be back from his trip. I wanted to leave him a lovely surprise when he came back home. He tried contacting me in several other ways, telling me to unblock him or else. He even went as far as to email me. Little did he know that I would only add it to the roster of evidence against him because even though he'd reach out, he'd never failed to leave a trail of threats behind. Even though the threats were growing in ferocity and intensity, I was steadfast in my quest for justice. If ever there was a time to leave, surely it was now, when he wasn't even in the country. I was scared, that much was true, but I was even more terrified of what would happen if I would stay with him, especially after ignoring him for the entirety of his trip. I knew that there was no turning back. I had to leave, and I had to leave him for good. I became consumed with the pursuit of my freedom, deciding to move Henry and me out, as well as all of my belongings, to stay with a close friend of mine. Dorian's trip to Mexico became the catalyst for my liberation. His attempts to break me only fueled my determination to break free from his toxic grip. The storm was brewing, and I was ready to unleash its fury. My determination grew stronger, fueled by the love I had for myself and Henry. Together, we would rise above the darkness and rebuild our lives on a foundation of strength and resilience. A total of 12 days had gone by ever since he'd left, and I was extremely proud of all my progress. I had managed to find a lawyer, begin building a case, and move out of that toxic environment. I knew that I couldn't have done it without the help of my friends and family. Without their help and support, I definitely wouldn't have been able to move out and move on so quickly. As I was finalizing moving out and collecting the last of my belongings, I got a call from one of Dorian's brothers. Knowing that it was probably Dorian himself seeking to reach out after ignoring him for so long. "Hello? Georgia, I'm sick of this insolence." "Why are you calling me? I don't want to speak with you." "Are you still up to your childish antics? Having a baby messed up your head, huh?" "What do you want?" "I just wanted to let you know, since you insist on not unblocking me, that when I and the boys come back from our vacation, we'll be headed home for a celebration. So you better prepare some nice food for us." "Ha! You're hilarious if you think I'm going to do all of that for you and your brothers. I have a baby to take care of. I'll let you get all of your childishness out of your system before we return, because it's not just me and my brothers coming back. I've invited over some important shareholders of the company, so everything needs to be prepared for them. Have the food ready, and you better dress up nice. We'll be coming back early in the morning, so everything better be ready by then." I was fuming. How could he speak to me in such a way? Hearing him speak now made me realize how foolish I'd been this entire time. Taking off those rose-tinted glasses made me realize just how ugly this man was. He was a monster, a demon, and I was disgusted to know that I'd been with him this entire time. Instead of showcasing my newfound strength and determination by lashing out at him, I paused and took a deep breath. "Okay, Dorian, don't you worry. You and your brothers and your superiors are all going to be shocked by what I have in store for you." "That's the spirit. That's the type of wife I want. Okay, talk later. I'll text you a list of all the dietary restrictions and stuff." I hung up the call and proceeded to make my way out of the door, leaving behind the divorce papers on the kitchen counter as well as my ring. I took the last of my belongings and left the home, saying goodbye to a life that had plagued me for so long. Dorian's return from his lavish trip to Mexico 2 days later was met with a scene that left him dumbfounded and embarrassed. I'm sure when he stepped through the front door, his eyes widened in shock to find the house eerily quiet and half empty. The absence of his wife and child, coupled with the conspicuous presence of divorce papers on the kitchen counter, must have left him reeling in disbelief. Oh, how I wished I could have witnessed the complete shock and horror etched across his face. I relished the thought of him realizing that his reign of control and manipulation had crumbled beneath the weight of my determination. But alas, I was bombarded with calls from his 5 brothers and a seething Dorian himself, his anger palpable through the phone. As I reluctantly answered the call, Dorian's voice exploded with rage. He demanded an explanation for everything, reiterating that these important shareholders were with him and they were just as confused as he was. And so I calmly informed him that I was divorcing him, that the walls of his deceit were closing in, and that he would be lucky if he could ever comfortably show his face in this town again. Confusion and desperation laced his voice as he demanded clarification. I challenged him to check the news, and surely enough, as was planned, the local tabloids splashed his scandalous downfall across their front pages. The man who touted family values, the leader of a company built on ideals of love and support, stood exposed as a hypocrite, his true nature laid bare for all to see. With the help of the very publicists he had hired for our son's birthday, I orchestrated a campaign to reveal the toxic truth of our relationship, spreading the news far and wide through social media and word of mouth. Dorian's swift downfall was not limited to public humiliation alone. The repercussions of his actions rippled through his professional life. His superiors, once impressed by his charm and seemingly perfect family life, saw through this facade. They deemed him an embarrassment, a stain on their reputation, and swiftly terminated his employment. One of his former superiors, in a scathing remark, stated that keeping Dorian on the job would be bad for business, exposing him as an anomaly, a contradiction to everything their company stood for. Stripped of his title, reputation, and social standing, Dorian became a pariah in the eyes of the community. The man who once held his head high, respected and admired, was now reduced to a pitiful figure, desperately trying to salvage what little remained of his shattered life. As for me, I reveled in the knowledge that my escape from his clutches was imminent. The divorce proceedings were underway, and with the weight of evidence and the support of my legal team, I knew I stood on solid ground. Dorian's desperate attempts to plead for my return played out like a broken record. Each plea met with resolute rejection. He would call, his voice laced with remorse, begging me to reconsider, and each time I stood my ground, my voice firm and unwavering. "Lyra, please, I'm begging you to come back to me. I've realized my mistakes, and I'm truly remorseful. Our family is worth fighting for." "Dorian, there's no way I would ever entertain the idea of being with you again. Having Henry opened my eyes to what a loving, supportive partnership should be like. We both deserve better than the toxic relationship you gave us." "But Lyra, I'm nothing without you. I've lost everything, and I can't bear the thought of living without you. And I'll learn to love Henry. I swear I'll do anything." "That's not my concern anymore, Dorian. This is the bed you made, and now you have to lie in it." Dorian's pitiful pleas washed over me, but I remained steadfast in my resolve. The scars of his emotional abuse ran deep, and no amount of remorse could erase the pain I had endured. I had found strength in the realization that I deserved happiness and a life free from his toxicity. In the face of his desperate pleas, I held my ground, unwavering in my decision to forge a new path. The road ahead would be challenging, But I knew I possessed the strength and resilience to rebuild my life, leaving behind the shadows of a broken marriage. Dorian would have to face the consequences of his actions, and as the divorce proceedings loomed, he would learn that there are no shortcuts to redemption when a heart has been shattered.